In problem 1, you are told that A Limited, a company, has issued 1 lakh equity shares to the public. The entire issue was underwritten, which means that 3 underwriters X, Y and Z took responsibility for the entire issue of the shares. Basically, they made an agreement to purchase this entire 1 lakh if in case the public does not subscribe to it at all. Okay, but they did it in a certain ratio. Each one took a certain percentage or agreed to take a certain percentage of those many shares. So out of the 1 lakh shares, X said, I will take 40% of the 1 lakh. 40% of the 1 lakh is 40,000. Y said, out of the 1 lakh, I will take 30%, which is 30,000. And Z said, I will also take 30%, which is 30,000. Each one, depending upon the type of risk they would like to take, they have taken it accordingly, and based on this liability, this gross liability, they will accordingly get commission later. Fine. Now we have something called a gross liability ratio. 4:3:2. Okay, this is based on 40, 30 and 30%. Sorry, it's again 30. 4:3:3, right? So the ratio in which all of these underwriters have agreed to take this issue of shares is 4:3:3. And this gross liability ratio is very important because later on, whatever surplus we get over here or liability that we get, we always distribute it in the gross liability ratio. Is that fine? Now, this is how much they agreed to take. Always remember, gross liability is what the underwriters agree to take. Doesn't mean that they have to take the whole amount of shares. Whatever we are writing in these columns, please remember it is figures in number of shares. These are not amounts. Okay. Now, out of this gross liability, out of what they had agreed, now let's see how much they actually managed to sell. Now, how will we know how much each one has sold? By looking at the mark, the stamp on all the applications. So when we get all those applications, in the company, we start sorting them out, and then we see the stamp. Okay, X has these many, Y has these many, Z has these many. Fine. So first you need to know how many applications were received by the company out of the applications that they had sold. So what does it say? Applications for 80,000 shares were received in all. Okay, so you sold, I will write here solution 1. These are working notes. Okay, the file will be made available to you later. So total issue or number of shares issued is 1 lakh, not rupees. Okay, these are number of shares. Applications, that is, we sent out applications for 1 lakh equity shares. Applications received, meaning public subscribed for 80,000. Have you followed? So applications received were 80,000. What does this mean? The remaining 20,000 remained unsubscribed. Okay, so from this issue, would you say that the issue is undersubscribed or oversubscribed? In this case, it is an undersubscription, right? So the issue we say has been undersubscribed by 20,000 applications. All right. So this is where the underwriters come into picture. Fine. So this shows us how much is undersubscribed. In the second one, we will calculate how many are marked and unmarked applications. So total applications received were 80,000. Am I right? We've already written 80,000 total applications were received. Now we need to separate marked and unmarked applications from total what we have received. We need to know how many applications were because of the efforts of the underwriters and how many applications were directly received by the company. So what does the problem says? 80,000 shares were received in all, out of which applications for 20,000 shares had the stamp of X. So marked applications, where it says less marked applications, they are saying 20,000 had the stamp of X. That means he sold or managed to sell 20,000. Am I right? So very good. His liability was 40,000 and out of that he has managed to sell at least 20,000 shares by himself. Okay. Then those for 10,000 shares, meaning applications for 10,000 shares, had the stamp of Y. Okay. Those for 10,000 shares had that of Y, meaning the shares of 10,000, the applications of 10,000 shares had the stamp of Y, which means he had agreed to sell 30, right, if something goes wrong, but he has managed to sell at least 10 as of now. And the remaining 20,000 was sold by Z. Is this clear? And they are saying the remaining 30,000 shares did not bear any stamp. Now in this problem they have given directly how many were unmarked. So less marked, correct? Marked applications X, Y and Z. X was 20, this was 10 and 20,000. In this problem it's directly given, it's just the first problem, but normally you will have to calculate this. So 20, 30, 40, 50. 50 applications had the stamp of all three, which means 30,000 applications had no stamp and they are called unmarked applications. Fine. So we already minus the marked applications. Let's get the balances after minusing. So what are we doing? We are reducing their liability. Remember, gross liability is what they agree. And then you keep on reducing that liability and you see how much they have or the company has already sold to the public. Only what is unsold will be taken by the underwriters, right? So once again, 30 minus 10, 20,000 and 30 minus 20, 10,000. Fine. Now there are unmarked applications and given in the problem and what we have also calculated, there are 30,000 unmarked applications, isn't it? Now what to do with this 30? How to distribute it between X, Y and Z? And why do we need to distribute it also? I will tell you. See, unmarked applications are sold directly by the public, correct? But at least they have been sold, isn't it? The public has taken it. So why should the underwriters purchase those many shares? Right? It's not their liability. The public has already purchased it, whether company has sold it directly or whoever has sold it. But it has been sold to the public. It's given away to the public. So what we need to do is unmarked applications, which is 30,000. I just continued from the previous working note, in gross liability ratio, meaning distributed in gross liability ratio. So how much each one gets? X is, check the ratio, 4:3:3. In other words, either you can do it this way, 4 by 10, 3 by 10 and 3 by 10. That is how we calculate ratios, right? It is 4 plus 3 plus 3, meaning 10. So 4 out of 10, 3 out of 10 and 3 out of 10. Or you can directly take these percentages, 40%, 30%, 30%. It's one and the same. Fine. And that way we are going to distribute this 30,000 in the gross liability ratio. Clear? So how much do you get? Let's see, let's calculate and try it out. 30,000 multiplied by 4 divided by 10, you get 3,000 for x. Okay, then 3 divided by 10, 30,000, you get 1,000. Sorry, one second, there is somewhere. 12,000. Okay, it's supposed to be 12,000 in the first case. Alright, then in the second case, 30,000 multiplied by 3 divided by 10 or 30% is 9,000, and finally this is also 9,000 because it is also 3 by 10, isn't it? So this gives you total 30,000. Have you followed? So what have we done? Those direct applications which were received by the company, we need to reduce from their liability, because since those shares are already sold to the public, the underwriters no longer have a liability to buy those shares, right? So 12, 9 and 9,000. It will come here. Unmarked applications. 9,000 and 9,000. Is that fine? And then again we need to deduct this. Minus 8,000. Then this will be 11,000. Correct? And this will be 1,000. So this is either the resultant liability or the surplus. Now if there is a surplus, what does surplus mean? Whenever there is a negative figure over here, okay, that is if this is greater, unmarked applications are greater than this amount, you will get a negative figure here. So if whenever there is a negative figure, there will be something called a surplus. In this case, we do not have the surplus as such. We directly have the net liability. Okay, so in this problem, this is the net liability. There is no surplus that needs to be further distributed. We'll see another problem where we'll have a surplus figure as well. So net liability of each one, x plus y plus z, how much do you get? 8,000 plus 11,000 plus 1,000. 20,000 total liability. Now let's understand the concept. Let's understand the logic behind this 20,000. See, look here, when I calculated in the beginning, I said total shares which were issued were 1 lakh. Am I right? And publics applied for 80,000 shares. Applications were received. Unsubscribed portion or undersubscribed portion of the shares was 20,000. Now whose liability is 20,000? This has to be taken by X, Y, Z. Whatever public doesn't take, underwriters have to take. So 20,000 X, Y, Z is the liability of X, Y and Z. Now how much each one has to take? That we have got over here in the net liability. Have you seen? 8 plus 11 plus 1. How much does it give you? 20,000 shares, which means that the solution is correct, because this net liability is equal to the undersubscribed portion of the shares, this 20,000. Have you followed this? So basically what is net liability? The remaining shares that the underwriters have to subscribe to because the public has not done it, right? And that we get only after we reduce the marked applications and the unmarked applications from their total liability. So that was problem 1, a simple problem based on marked and unmarked applications.